Now, I hope you're starting to get a sense of the style of the presentation. I'm not a motivational speaker here to give you candy floss for the brain. I may be using the tools and the techniques of motivational speakers, the humor and the multimedia, but it's more humor as a weapon because I want to make a very important point. And I hope this is one of the points that you take home with you and back to the offices, is that people born on either side of the 1968 have very different values. The greatest generational divide exists at this point. And your branding, your marketing, and how your customer experiences need to reflect this. I'll explain why. 1968 has been called the year that rocked the world. And you can go from country to country to country, and you'll find examples of social, political, technological, and economic change which just came rushing in. But let me put it to you in more popular terms. If I'd said to you back in 68, there was a little contraption made out of plastic and metal, fits in the palm of your hand, with no wires attached to it, that you could speak to anyone, anywhere in the world, if I'd said that to you back in 68? And yet today, how many of us can't even go to the toilet without taking our mobile phones with us? Which is why I personally believe that video phones will never really take off. We don't actually want to see where you are. If I'd said to you back in 68, by the turn of the century, the Berlin Wall would be in, museums, or that Russia wouldn't be the big thing, but that China and India would, or that Nelson Mandela would be the ex-president of South Africa. Quick little history factor. All of these events, from Tiananmen Square, the students standing in front of the tank, happened in April or May of 1989. The Berlin Wall coming down in November of 89. The fall of communist Russia happened in December of 89. And Nelson Mandela released in February of 1990. What we are looking at here is 8 months of world history. How many of you would have put all of these huge world-changing events within a period of 8 months? Sometimes the world can change like that. And there's a generation of children who grew up during this summer period between 68 and 89, when everything just seemed to be coming apart and unraveling at the seams. Where we'd moved from putting a man in the moon to the 3-day working week and the winter of discontent. Sex Pistols were replacing the Beatles with their songs on anarchy in the UK and the sense of social abandonment. And it was the height of the Cold War. And the generation born during this period have been called Generation X. X because it's the unknown, it's the variable, it's the thing that can change. Now, when baby boomers went to their parents as children, baby boomers heard something like this: "Go out, my son," and perhaps for the first time in history, "Go out, my daughter," and change the world, because we want you to have the things that we never had. Generation X heard something very different when they went to their parents as young kids. I mean, it was chaos. Everything was Thatcherism and Reaganism, and just the world seemed to be falling apart. And they went to their moms and dads and said, "Mom, Dad, what's going on?" And Mom and Dad went, don't know. And this generation learned at a very young age that the system will not provide. And if the system will not provide, then the only person who will look after me is me. And as a result, they're a very skeptical and cynical generation. This was largely reinforced back in the late 1980s, when the oldest of this generation entered the workplace. In 1989, it was a time when companies were right-sizing, downsizing, outsourcing. It meant the same thing: you lost your job. And Generation X looked at their parents and parents' friends and people who had been working at companies for 15, 20 loyal years just being booted out. And they said to this and said, "We'll never let that happen to us." And as a result, I'm not sure you can actually get brand loyalty from this generation. I don't even believe that somebody with a sexy brand like Apple can honestly say that they have brand loyalty from Generation X. I think you can get concept loyalty, but there's a difference. If Nokia, Dell, or Sony come up with a better concept than what Apple has, they will shift. They're not a sentimental generation. You need to remain constantly relevant to this generation. Apple's doing a pretty good job about it at the moment, innovating and coming up with new products. I think somebody who intimately understood this generation was Madonna, and she constantly reinvented herself to remain relevant to them. And even today, as a mother with 3 children and writing children's novels, she again has remained relevant to this generation. If you really want to connect with generation, try and connect with them on a relationship level. This generation puts relationships with family, friends, and experiences ahead of work. Baby boomers put work first, but this generation puts work fourth or fifth level of importance. Try and build deep and meaningful connections with this generation. Crowdsourcing is a great way to do this. Invite them in to help develop products with you so that they have an intimate connection with your brand. But make sure that the relationship is a mutually beneficial one and that it's a two-way relationship. So things like Twitter and Facebook are great channels that you can use to enter into a two-way dialogue with this generation. Google Wave is probably one of the best examples at the moment of crowdsourcing. They've sent out 100,000 invites to people to asking them to contribute to this new and latest greatest net development. And in turn, these 100,000 people have been given 20 invites each. That's 2 million people that Google now has working for them, helping them develop this product. I'll show you a video which I think captures this generation better than I can in words. Life short, play more. If you get that, you get this generation.